Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. I'm your host Marcy, and today we have another solo episode. And before we get into the topic, I want to give you guys a life update. Over winter break, your internet nephew was able to go to camp. Since the last time he was there, they had instituted a policy where kids under 15 were not allowed to have cell phones, but since he's 15, he was allowed to have one. He was having a good time, I guess, but he also missed us very much. So there was a lot of calling back and forth, FaceTiming. There was one point on Wednesday night of the break that he was calling me back to back. So the camp ran from the 19th to the 23rd, so I thought. So the whole time I'm trying to help him acclimate to the environment that he was in. And, I would just remind him when he was coming home, when was packing day. They gave him a schedule about the activities. So he and I would check in every day and I would let him know what was up for that day and all of that. However, I did find that there was a lot of downtime in the schedule. So those were the moments when Aiden would pick to call me. I think Wednesday night, he called me back to back at least 17 times. I think at one point they noticed that he had his phone on him and they decided to take it away and put it away for safekeeping. He's so smart that he figured out how to call me on FaceTime from the iPad. Yes, from the iPad. So we were still checking in. He wasn't able to talk to me as often as he was before. So they were giving him on the schedule, actually, one time a day that he's able to talk to me. So, between calling me and my mom, he actually even called my brother because I told him my brother wanted to talk to him. It was just a lot. It was more, I feel like it was more stressful having him there than actually keeping him with me, even though I was getting a break. So I thought the camp ended, like I said before, on the 23rd. So I'm expecting my baby to come. I go down to the reception site, like where they offload the bus. And I get to the site and all of a sudden I'm looking around and I'm like, this is suspicious. Why is nobody here? Where are the kids? Where are the parents? So I'm like, did I get the time wrong? So I opened the email, lo and behold, they're supposed to come back Monday the 26th, not Friday the 23rd. So in my head, I'm like, oh snap. Like, what am I supposed to do? Especially because Aiden already was tired and he wanted to come home. He missed us. So at that point, I called my brother who works in South Jersey near the camp. And well, not really that near. He was like about 45 minutes away with traffic. I called him. I let him know the situation. He's like, all right, cool. I'm just going to let my boss know so that I can go pick him up. So he was able to pick him up for me. And I headed from the city over there to Jersey. When he got back, everything was fine. Like he was perfectly, chilling with my mom and my grandma. He was able to spend time with them. And I, immediately went. And that evening I was already there taking care of him as well. So yeah, things that happen. You're stressed out. I didn't even realize that the camp was 7 days instead of just 5. So in my head, I was like, yeah, the camp is the last day is the 23rd. And then at one point he looked at the schedule and he kept texting me like, yeah, packing day is on Sunday and take the bus on Monday, take the van on Monday. And I'm like, no, that's not the dates. I'm telling him no. And he's like, okay, mom. But yeah, so thank goodness nothing happened. And my brother was able to pick him up. Actually, my brother shared with me that his boss's son is autistic and also goes to sleepaway camps, and he's had to deal with the same situation. So it wasn't a big deal for him to leave early from work and go pick up Aiden. Of course, him being the great uncle that he is, he was like, I'm going to take my baby and get him, McDonald's and stuff. And they were able to spend time together as well. So it was funny. Another thing that happened was that, actually, I've been dealing with like issues with his dad, not necessarily with me, but his dad actually called me the other day to complain that Aiden doesn't pick up the phone when he calls him. And honestly, I'm actually going to put it out to the comadres. Like, what do you think I should do? Because I really don't feel like I should force him to talk to his dad. I actually tried because his younger brother's birthday was, I want to say sometime in like February, and I asked the RBT to help him call and kind of prompt the conversation between them. And Aiden got so frustrated that he bumped her on the head with the cell phone. So that was the end of that. He did apologize immediately, but it was just kind of like a gut reaction. I guess he felt stressed at the fact that they were asking him to do something that he didn't want to do. So I don't know what to do, honestly, with this situation. And the fact that he's calling me to complain, and I'm just like, he's 15. I can't tell him what to do. Like, I can suggest things, but I can't like physically force him to call when he doesn't feel like he has a connection with you. All I'm saying is that he calls and FaceTimes me and my brothers and my mom. So it's something to do with the relationship that they have, or the lack of relationship, that Aiden doesn't feel like there is a reason to call his father. So, I mean, it is what it is. I'll put it out to the comadres ones that have more of a cordial relationship with their children's dad, and for suggestions. So that'll be open. So getting into the topic today is one of my favorite, because it's just something so characteristic of us autistic children. And the topic is stimming. The reason why the topic came up is that it's becoming more controversial whether children or autistic people should be allowed to stim or not. The debate is now that the world is becoming more neurodiverse affirming. Families are wondering whether or not they should be stopping children from stimming, and whether, if we are teaching our kids to be accepted, like teaching our kids to be accepted in the wider world, if stimming is going to be something that hinders them from integrating themselves into society. So we're going to be going over all of that. We're going to talk about what should we do if our child stims, and how can we as parents deal with the looks and stares. Because even though the world is becoming more neurodiverse affirming, we still have people that look at people that are not, quote unquote, that don't behave in the normal patterns of behavior, whatever normal means. Like, if they don't behave like everyone else, they're still going to look and talk and criticize, or whatever the case may be. Or in the case of children, they're going to be mean or make fun of our children. So we talked about stimming as one of those, not a red flag, but one of those things that you look out for to determine whether you want to get your child evaluated or not. It's definitely something that if your toddler or infant is stimming, it's one of those huge indicators about whether you might want to take your child to be evaluated by professionals. So what is stimming? The dictionary definition of stimming is that it is short for self-stimulating behaviors. The term stim is used to describe one of the behaviors, which can include doing an action over and over or repeating the same sound several times. You may use stimming to help cope with emotions. While many people engage in stimming, the behavior has become associated with autism. So neurotypical people stim. People doodle, people hum to themselves, people like to pick at different things. They like to play with their hair when they're nervous. And when I'm anxious, I know I like to shake my leg. Some people even tap their feet when they're anxious. So It's different behaviors that are, but the biggest caveat about it is that they are repetitive behaviors. There are all kinds of different types of stimming. We're going to go category by category. The first type is auditory stimming, and that involves hearing and sounds such as snapping your fingers, repeatedly touching your ears to like cover. So when our kids, I know my kid, he covers his ears often. It's usually to isolate and reduce the noise. So that would be considered a stimulatory behavior because they're trying to reduce the inputs in the environment on their own. Another form of stimming is vocal stimming. So that type of stimming includes sounds that you make with your voice or throat, such as coughing or clearing your throat several times, repeating the same word, or humming. That vocal stimming, I find through my experience and my years of teaching, especially working with kids on the spectrum, usually kids that are non-speaking have a vocal stim. I'm not saying like every kid, but a lot of the kids that I've taught that are non-speaking have vocal stims. So they hum or they make noises to isolate themselves or to make themselves feel better. Another type of stimming is tactile stimming. That includes actions that involve touching or feeling, such as when they rub or scratch their skin, open and close their fists, tap their fingers on an object or surface, or flap your hands or arms. The next category is visual stimming. Those behaviors involve sight, such as looking at lights for a long period of time, or frequently blinking or rolling your eyes. Another type of visual stimming that I have seen is that children often isolate what they're looking at by using their hands to cover whatever they're looking at and looking through a little slit between their fingers to look at things closely as well. Another one is like laying on the floor and looking at things at a very close distance or getting really, really close to the TV as well. The next category is vestibular, excuse me. Another category is vestibular stimming, and that involves movement or balance, such as pacing back and forth or twirling around. Next is olfactory. Those stims involve tasting or smelling, such as smelling or sniffing things or people, chewing on or licking objects. And there's also full body stimming. So that type of behavior includes movements that involve your whole body, such as rocking your body back and forth and spinning around. Remember that stims, I may not have covered the stim that your child has. Remember that stims are as individual as a child themselves. The only qualification for the stim is that it's a repetitive behavior. So we're gonna talk about what does it look like. So some common stimming behaviors for neurotypical people are biting your nails, twirling your hair around your fingers, like playing with your fingers, cracking your knuckles or other joints, drumming your fingers on things, tapping your pencil. So a lot of people, when they are anxious or nervous or just kind of to get their mind off of things, they start stimming by tapping their pencil. Another one is jiggling your foot. And like I said before, I love to shake my leg and I'm anxious or I'm trying to concentrate or something. Another one is whistling. In an autistic person, stimming might involve hand or finger movements, flapping hands, flicking fingers, or snapping fingers. Body movements such as bouncing, jumping, twirling, rocking back and forth while sitting or standing. Pacing or walking on tiptoes. The tiptoe walking is a huge indicator of stimming behavior. So some parents are not aware. However, when the children are walking on tiptoe, it's providing input to the bottom of their foot. So that is a huge sensory stimulatory behavior. I've noticed that parents sometimes find it super cute and they're like, oh, look, if it's a girl, they're like, oh, look, she looks like she's walking on heels. But the prolonged behavior of tiptoe walking will affect your child's feet, and it'll create, what is it called? It'll just overdevelop the muscle that is located between the ball of your foot and your heel. And sometimes what they need to do to be able to remedy that is put your child in orthopedic boots. So while doing that for short amounts of time is not a big deal, but if your child is constantly toe walking to find stimulatory input, then it's something that you should discuss with your pediatrician or your care team to see what you can do to take care of it sooner rather than later. Some other things that you can see what it looks like is pulling hair. In girls, plucking hair out or playing with the tips of their hair. Some that I've seen is like pulling on the horquetillas, I don't know how to say it in English, the split ends, or rubbing the ends of your hair on your face or on your body. Another one I've seen is licking their hair. Another type of stimming is posturing. For example, that's holding your hands or fingers out at an angle. Like if you're holding your hands in front of your face, twisting them to a certain angle to make a shape is considered stimming as well. Another one is arching your back while sitting. Visual stimulation can be, some examples are looking at something sideways, watching an object spin, fluttering fingers near eyes, staring at lights, rotating objects such as ceiling fans. Repetitive blinking, repetitive behavior, for example, opening and closing doors, or flicking switches, rubbing the skin, or scratching. One thing I have seen is that I had students that used to want to open and close doors a lot. Another comadre that was on the show before, she told me about how her nephew used to like to go around and play with the door handles. So jiggle the door handles. Another type of sensory input or like stimming behavior is chewing or mouthing objects, licking, rubbing, or stroking particular types of objects, especially for the texture. One that I find kind of cute, but it can be interpreted as odd, is sniffing at people or objects. Rearranging objects is a big one. When your toddler is small, if you notice that they like to line up objects or rearrange them in a certain pattern, either by color or by size or whatever other way that they like to arrange the objects, that is considered stimulatory behavior. So that's another thing that you should watch out for if you're not sure whether your child should be evaluated or not. If your child does that kind of behavior often, it's something to bring up to your pediatrician as well. One thing that Aiden really does a lot is listening to the same song or noise over and over again. So if he's really into a cartoon or a show or anything, he'll play it over and over again. And he won't let the full episode play. It's just that little soundbite that he wants to hear. So it takes a lot of patience because you have to think about what it's doing for your child and think about the situation as well. So we'll talk about what you can do to anticipate that and how you can help them cope in a different way. So about the rearranging objects, some kids might spend hours on end rearranging toys, or instead of playing with them. Repetitive behavior may also involve obsessions or preoccupations with certain objects, or reciting the intricate details of a particular subject matter. The student that I have mentioned before that was obsessed with trains, he would stim in a way that he would like to look at the train station map and really, like, he would close one eye and just look at it really closely because he liked to isolate it and just look at the colors in a certain way. There are other repetitive behaviors that can cause physical harm. So these are more severe, and as parents, we should help our kids find other ways to stim or find another way to get that same type of input. So some of these are headbanging, punching or biting, excessive rubbing or scratching at the skin, picking at scabs or sores, or swallowing dangerous items. So in all of this, I always try to figure out why of behavior. What is the purpose of this behavior? So it's not always easy to determine the reason for the stimming. It's usually a coping mechanism, like I said, that can serve a variety of purposes. Stimming can also vary depending on the situation. For example, some children stim more when they're feeling stressed or anxious. Understanding why they do a stim is often more important than trying to stop it, unless it is harmful to you or someone else. There are many causes or triggers that may lead a person with autism to engage in stimming, including, so these are some of the situations where you can see autistic people stim more depending on what it is. So, for example, if there's too much stimulation, if there's too much noise in the environment, or they're feeling overstimulated in wherever they're at, the stimming can help them face too many things that affect their senses, such as too many smells or sounds all at once. If there's too little stimulation, sometimes your senses may need more action to keep you focused. So you're going to stim to help you focus more. Wanting pain to stop or reduce is another reason why people stim. So banging their head or a body part has been shown to help lower the pain you may feel. So if you're in pain, banging your head or hitting your hand is going to take your mind off of the pain that you're already going through. Another thing is managing emotions. If you're happy or sad, that can trigger stimming, adapting to an unfamiliar environment. I feel like this is a stim, but so Aiden, when he gets to new places to help him feel comfortable in the environment, he'll go and visit every single room and see what's in there. And then once he's done doing his little house visit, I guess, he'll sit down and just be near me. But I feel like that's the way that he's able to adapt to new environments. So another reason people stim is like to adapt to an unfamiliar environment. They also stim to reduce anxiety or calm themselves. One big one is expressing frustration, especially if they have trouble communicating effectively. One stim that Aiden was engaging in before he was speaking was hugging you very tightly for that sensory input, and then digging his chin into whatever body part he had access to. So that could be your shoulder, or, if he was smaller, obviously, like the side of your body or anything like that. Another reason why people stim is to avoid certain activities or expectations. But I feel like the avoidance is because of stress. The avoidance causes stress, and then they engage in the stimulatory behaviors to help themselves cope. So one thing to figure out really why your child stims or what your child's stim is, if you're not really sure, working with a behavior specialist or therapist with autism experience can help you understand the reasons for the stimming behavior. A lot of questions that I get from parents is stimming harmful? So it depends on what your child's stim is. Many autistic people stim when they're excited and happy, not just to diffuse feelings of being overstimulated or distressed. While most stims aren't harmful, some behaviors can be, like we talked about before. So some of them that I've seen are the self-rubbing or self-scratching that can create, tears in the skin, excessive nail biting, which can expose the nail bed to infection, hand banging, which can cause a concussion, hand biting. The hand biting, I haven't seen myself in person. However, a mom that I met through taking Aiden to different activities actually told me that her son engages in hand biting. So actually he would bite his whole arm. And to prevent that, the therapist, and I don't know if she was involved as well, they came up with some kind of cover so that when he does engage in the behavior, it doesn't tear at the skin. But when he's not wearing the, I guess, a sleeve, when he's not wearing the sleeve, he actually had bite marks and scars from the times that he would get overly stimulated and he would just start really biting and tearing into his skin. Another one is ear clapping. So like really slapping their ears, slapping or hitting themselves. Stimming can also become a problem if the behaviors persist for hours or become a daily occurrence. In these cases, they may actually cause distress and further impair the ability to self-regulate emotions. So those stimming examples often reinforce the stigmatization of autistic people. So when we see movies that portray autistic people, a lot of the stimming behaviors that the people have are big stims that if happening in a social situation or outside in the street, people are gonna look and stare if you're not well versed on what autistic people tend to do or not. The potentially harmful stimming behaviors can continue to get worse if someone feels ostracized or alone. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The person is stimming, people are looking at them, they're like, oh no, that person's different, I'm not going to be near them. They feel further ostracized, and then they end up feeling more alone because people don't want to interact with them in that way. So I'm just going to put out a trigger warning right now for this part of the segment. In my research, I found out about this awful psychologist. For many years, experts thought repetitive movements resulted in deprivation or even trauma and that they hindered learning. Psychologist Ole Ivar Lavas, an early autism specialist, quote unquote, reportedly referred to them as garbage behavior. He made suppressing these habits a priority. Lavas and his followers electrically shocked, screamed at, shook, and slapped autistic children. I can't picture that happening now. However, the environment back in the 50s and 60s when they would take autistic people and just put them in a home, or I remember some assistant teachers, they would talk about size 7, something here in New York City, which was like a district before District 75 that is obviously more progressive and they accept the children for who they are. Before that, it was kind of like, a place where you went and you dumped your children. So others prescribed antipsychotics or for other stupefying drugs to keep the child dull and not aware about what's going on to reduce the stimming behavior, quote unquote. So even in today's sometimes gentler treatment paradigms, therapists often train children to have quiet hands as opposed to freely flapping ones. There was this amazing article written by Stephen Kapp. He is an autism fellow in a university in the UK, and his research study actually interviewed autistic people and got their perspective on stimming. So in his research, he wrote that autistic adults have defended their right to these behaviors, reclaiming the technical term self-stimulatory behaviors as stimming. They have self-published vlogs, video logs, and books that reveal how it helps them cope. Society needs to take their lead and accept these behaviors by understanding their benefits. So in this peer-reviewed medical journal article that surveyed actually autistic people, so not people that think that they're experts, but people that are experts in their own autism, were able to respond. And in one of the sections, it said breaking the rules. Finally, most participants described encountering social judgment and rejection because of their stimming. So many regularly felt like social outcasts and thought they were perceived as weird or immature because they engaged in the stimming behaviors. In response to rejection, participants often conceal their stims. So this is where masking comes into play. For instance, under a desk, they transmuted them, for example, replacing hand flapping with activities that allowed their hands to flap freely, like tennis or chess, that engaged their hands and arms, or suppressing them, only stimming when they were alone or around accepting people. It's funny because one of the people that I interviewed with autism, when they were on camera, they were able to suppress their stims, and we interviewed for like close to an hour. As soon as the cameras were off, they asked me whether I was okay with them stimming, and I said yes. So they were free hand flapping and felt really comfortable, which made me feel good because they felt like they were not going to be judged, which is great. So in the study, one of the participants reported that as a child, she loved to spin and swing, but later realized that the behaviors were deemed unacceptable by the rest of the people in society. It actually feels glorious, she said, if there's nobody around and I can skip or I can spin, and it's like I'm breaking the rules, she says. Suppressing stims is far from beneficial, the study showed. The effort that it takes and the energy makes people feel, in the words of another female participant, more on edge. Educators have often considered stims a distraction, but many autistic people say the opposite is true. Stims are the equivalent of doodling. They say freeing the mind to concentrate on other things. So one thing I do want to point out is that we have talked about autistic burnout very briefly on the show. Actually, I'm planning an episode around it. So constantly masking can lead to autistic burnout, especially when people don't feel accepted for who they are. If they're going to feel judged, they're going to suppress those behaviors as much as they can. And it just takes so much energy. So think about if you're a lefty, for example, and I feel like this is a bad example, but it's just what I'm thinking of. So let's say that you're a lefty, and back in the day in Catholic school, they used to make you write with your right hand because the left is of whatever, not of God. So I would think that putting the effort into learning how to write with your right hand would take so much energy out of your body, just like suppressing stimulatory behavior in people who are autistic takes so much energy out of their day. And instead of using the energy to concentrate, they're using it for other things. So I feel like long term, as the participants stated, it'll cause more harm than actually good. So I do want to bring up two children in my class that are on the spectrum. Well, two of the many that I have in my class that are on the spectrum. So I have one that has a more acceptable stim, quote unquote. So his stim is that when he does really well in an assignment or anything, or you give him a congratulations, he squeals. So he goes, like he'll squeal really like high pitched, and he'll hand flap. So that we don't really bring attention to it. He feels free to do it whenever he feels joy. And then the other one is, I feel that he does it because he's not getting enough sensory input. So he's making his body do these big movements to get the sensory input. So his stim is that he'll crouch down on the floor, frog style, and jump up really high. I don't have a problem with either of them stimming in the way that they feel comfortable. However, the second one, I try to watch where he's stimming and kind of give him direction in a way that I'm letting him know, like, hey, I don't mind if you do this. However, please be careful. Please try to have a safe body so that you don't hurt yourself. I would hate for him to go home and he hurt himself jumping up, especially when he does it near the front of the classroom, because there is a whiteboard and there are sharp edges. So I'm just thinking that when he's doing those behaviors and jumping up in the air like that, he's not really watching where he's going. And it has happened in the classroom this year already that he has accidentally hit other kids with his body because he's not he's not having full body awareness. So what I try to teach my students is that everybody needs some kind of sensory input, and it can look like easy, like the hand flapping, or it can look really big, like the jumping up and down. However, I feel that as a society, we need to create acceptance in the way that kids feel seen and validated for however they want to present themselves in their environment. So therapeutic attempts to eliminate stimming still remain common, even though we are in this like neurodiverse affirming environment and the world is changing as we speak. There's some people that are still trying to eliminate stimming. And I'm sure that it's not necessarily the therapist's idea, but parents feel that they don't want their kids judged, so they might ask for the stimming behavior to be reduced in a way or to be changed. So I can see where that comes from as well. The approach is misguided because it tends to strip people of a key means of coping. One caveat is that some forms of stimming, such as headbanging, obviously, are harmful and do warrant sensitive consensual treatment. No participant in that study that Stephen Kapp conducted wanted to engage in self-injurious stims, which were involuntary. So I don't even know, because I don't engage in that type of stim, I can't really not that I don't understand. I understand the functioning of the behavior. However, I'm sure that they don't purposely think like, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to do this, to help me cope with the situation. And one question that I do get from parents is, should we avoid or prevent them from stimming? In short, no. There is this movement that is going on now that hope that greater awareness of autistic people's experiences with stimming makes repetitive behaviors such as finger flicking or squealing more acceptable, not just in the classrooms with their teachers, i.e. me or whoever, but in supermarkets, movie theaters, and all public places. The neurodiversity movement, which celebrates autism both as a way of being and a disability to accept and support, has embraced stimming. Loud Hands is a defiant rallying cry. Stimming resources include Stimtastic, which sells stim toys and chewable jewelry, and Stim Your Heart Out, a dance project that encourages stimming in mainstream society. A way to help autistic people is not to discourage stimming, but to address certain reasons they stim. So sensory overload or distress are some of the main reasons. Some of the participants in the study mentioned several environmental modifications, including earplugs and brimmed hats to reduce sensory input, settings that meet autistic people's needs, or schedules that include breaks. Some like that, when stimming is not enough to relieve stress, autistic people might welcome calming medication or training in emotional self-regulation. One accommodation that I provide for my students so that she doesn't start stimming, because her stim, I don't know, she gets overstimulated, and instead of stimming, she actually just starts to cry. So one accommodation that I provide for her are noise canceling headphones, because she usually does the hand helmet with the hands over her ears. However, it doesn't work, especially in the cafeteria where she does it, because then she's not able to eat. So I give her the noise canceling headphones to help her modify the environment and avoid the overstimulation in the long run. In the study by CAP, the preliminary research suggested that there are commonalities between stimming and fidgeting that neurotypical people do. The bottom line may be that everyone stims in one form or another, and recognizing that fact might aid in creating a more accepting environment for all children. So a little bit more about Stephen Kapp. Like I said before, he's a research fellow in autism and neurodiversity at the University of Exeter in the UK. I do want to touch back on whether if the STIM is self-injurious, like hand biting or picking at their skin and scabs, you can enlist the help of people on your care team to help you think of solutions for this to help your child remain safe, especially because the self-injurious behavior can cause your child to have more severe repercussions later on. Aiden, the volume. If stimming is something that you want to reduce in your child, these are some things that you can keep in mind. Is that stims are part of our everyday lives. We know that. And neurotypical people as well as neurodiverse people stim. And as parents, we're tasked with figuring out the reason behind it. Always remember behavior is a form of communication. Understanding what our kids are trying to say is important. So this is where you have to put on your behavior specialist hat on. We have to remember ABC, which is antecedent, behavior, consequence. Evaluate the situation just before the stimming starts. That is the antecedent. You have to think about what appears to be triggering the behavior. What actually happens? That's where you figure out what the stim is. And then what is the consequence? So what is the child getting? Not a consequence like you're giving a consequence, but what is the child getting out of performing the stimming behavior? So what is immediately happening afterwards? So even if you want to reduce the behavior, you have to see what is the chart about what's happening. So breaking that down is important. So you have to also keep in mind that do what you can to eliminate or reduce the trigger or lower stress by providing a calming environment. Try to stick to a routine for daily tasks. Remember that which is normal, routines change, things change last minute. So it's important to let your kid know as soon as possible so that they don't get caught off guard. Teach other people that work with your child about their stims and what they can mean. So if you have people that are taking care of your child, let them know what those stims mean and how they can help them. We have to avoid punishing the behavior. That action is not recommended at all. If you stop one stimming behavior without addressing the reasons behind it, it's likely to be replaced with another, which may not be better. So one child that I saw when I was first getting my master's was that her stim was to lick her hair. An attempt by the teacher that was in the classroom to correct the behavior was by picking her hair up. So the replacement behavior that she chose without us teaching her, or the teacher rather, teaching her that was licking her hands. So like, which one is better than the other? We don't know, right? However, if you don't address the reason behind it, it's likely to be replaced with another, which may not be better. So that wasn't necessarily better. So remember that if it's self-injurious, you can teach alternative behaviors or other ways to deal with their emotions to help them calm down or self-soothe. Once you figure out the cause, your care team can make recommendations on the best way to manage the behavior. Some of the recommendations may include intervening during any unsafe behavior, knowing when not to respond, advising other family members on how they can help, creating a safe environment, teaching them self-management tools, and working with occupational therapists, educators, and the educational system to help your child learn how to cope or self-soothe in a different way. So, comadres, I'm going to end the episode here. I hope that this was enlightening for you and that you were able to learn a little bit more about stimming. I'm going to end the episode how I usually end it, which is follow me at Comadreando Pod on Instagram and every social media platform. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to send me a Comadre-gram via email at marcy@comadreandopod.com or slide up into my DMs. Please visit our website to read our latest blog posts, find out about future events, and get your official Comadre merch. Thank you for spending time with your comadre. I also want to give a plug to a International Women's Month activity that is happening. So I want to bring attention to a activity that's happening this weekend. It is called All Women Who Advocate for Autism Brunch. It's Saturday, the 16th of March from 12 to 2 p.m. at County Prep High School in Jersey City, New Jersey. It is hosted by Whole Spectrum Autism. If you want more information on the event, please visit their website or follow their Instagram page, whole_spectrum_autism, and check it out. Let me know if you guys are going to attend. All right. Have a great evening and enjoy your day. Bye.